Cyberpunk. The term was first used to describe a new genre in science fiction literature. Cyberpunk. It was inaugurated with the publication of William Gibson's Neuromancer, winner of the Hugo, Nebula, Locus, and Philip K. Dick Awards. Gibson's books, Burning Chrome, Neuromancer, Count Zero, and Mona Lisa Overdrive, have been translated into every language conceivable, and thousands of copies are sold daily around the world. The success of these books has generated spin-offs such as a graphic novel and a computer role-playing game. Mance's protagonist, Case, is a streetwise young man living at the periphery of a not unfamiliar high-tech society and its laws. Familiar? Yet a society with imploded cities, mutant subcultures, and artificial realities.
The sky above the port was the color of television tuned to a dead channel. Night City was like a deranged experiment in social Darwinism designed by a bored researcher who kept one thumb permanently on the fast-forward button.
You could say that cyberpunk is postmodern science fiction. It's a lot more postmodern than the old science fiction was. But science fiction is a very, I'm speaking of the American science fiction industry. And it's been traditionally a fairly reactionary literary form, a form in which you weren't encouraged to develop as a stylist or to investigate any of the things that were happening in the world of literature. And one of the things that the so-called cyberpunk writers have done, either consciously or unconsciously, is to look around the world outside, look at the fine arts as well, and import whatever they could use into to the sort of literary ghetto of science fiction. In New York publishing, they call science fiction the golden ghetto, because it's this sort of schlock area that makes the most money.
Nowhere in his books do we find traditional government. Real power is in the hands of the Zaibatsus, the multinationals.
The Zaibatsus, the multinationals that shaped the course of human history, had transcended old barriers. Hives with cybernetic memories, vast single organisms, their DNA coded in silicon. Kingpins in a given industry would be both more and less than people. A gradual and willing accommodation of the machine, the system, the parent organism.
I think we're moving toward a world where all the consumers under a certain age would probably tend to identify more with their consumer status or with the products they consume than they would with any sort of antiquated notion of nationality. We're increasingly sort of interchangeable.
When William Gibson's visions were published, they struck sparks in the real world. Scientists and hackers had found a future they couldn't wait to build, couldn't wait to live in, couldn't wait to sell. William Gibson, godfather of cyberpunk, found himself in a situation where he was actually programming the future. Never before had science fiction literature determined the way people thought and spoke about new technology. This synthesis of fiction and fact proved to be of value to each. And now, cyberpunk is a movement, looking set to blast toward the millennium.
At a certain point, I saw cyberpunk jump from being a literary description to being a description of something in the real world. I think the New York Times used it in a headline last year, "Cyberpunks do something," and I said, "What?" And I thought they were referring to this group of writers I'm associated with, but in fact they were referring to outlaw hackers who had broken into someone's data bank. And I believe Time magazine used it as well. in that sense. So which is an interesting thing to see. I was happy to see it take on this new life in the world outside, because then I felt I wouldn't be quite so saddled with it.
Gibson's image of computer cowboys hacking a perilous post-humanist lifestyle on a new technological frontier gave hackers and technophiles an identity and a set of ennobling myths. After reading Neuromancer, hackers started to realize that they were in fact, and probably had always been, cyberpunks.
Cyberpunk is a person who takes navigational control over the cybernetic electronic equipment and uses it not for the army, and not for the government, not for the Lufthansa airline, but for his or her own personal purpose.
Cyberpunks are many things. One thing they all have in common is the delight taken in the use of advanced technology against those who would try to restrict, direct, or control that technology. Perhaps this is why cyberpunks have been known to operate on the fringe of legality. In some cases, the laws to restrict their activities have not yet been written. In others, the laws exist and cyberpunks are squarely outside them. The identities of such individuals must naturally be concealed.
I'm poking around in people's databases. I deal in software. I trade. I don't crack. I'm not that good. But I deal with it, trade with people, and poke around in databases, play with phones. Well, I make free phone calls everywhere. You name it. Europe, Asia, the United States, Cuba. I called Russia once. They didn't like that very much. And I had first started doing it just to call, but now I'll do that so I can reach somebody's database or so I can trade software. It's just, it adds on an extra dimension. So I don't have to pay for the phone call. I'm not paying for the software. I'm not paying to get into their database. So it just, it makes it easier for me, and so I can do it more.
You just do it for the challenge of getting in, because it's like the big game, because the people who own the system, they hire so-called professionals to set up security, so to keep people like us out. So it's a game. You want to see how smart they are. And, if you can beat them at their own game, you get in, you look around. If it's boring, you leave. Generally, most people leave. You have some malicious types who like to go in and screw things up. But, I just do it for the challenge. It's fun.
These kids in the Catskills, they were like 14 and 15 years old. They were into trading software, and they had a computer bulletin board system. And they would put up codes for phreaking to make free phone calls, and people would put up numbers of databases, and somebody put up an AT&T database number. And so one kid who was good with hacking into systems got on, and he got into a menu that he didn't know what it was, and he just started poking around with it, and the next thing he knew, people came to his house, and he didn't know what happened, and they told him that he had moved a satellite. He moved a telecommunications satellite out of orbit, and they all freaked out. I mean, they came to his house going, "You moved the satellite," and, he was like 14 years old, so his parents were like passing out because there were federal agents in his house, and he was shitting bricks, and the federal agents came in, confiscated all his computer equipment, and scared the living daylights out of him, and he thought he was going away to jail for the rest of his life, and he just turned everybody in.
So by definition, in a bureaucracy, any individual who thinks for herself is considered a hooligan or a smartass or a know-it-all or a troublemaker. The creative child is the troublemaker. So by definition, an innovative person, particularly in technology with computers, anyone who gets in there, uses the computer for his or her own purpose, is by definition a hooligan, a punk.
Cyberpunk is made up of kids, freaks, or obsessive technophiles. And like any other movement, it has its stars. Michael Synergy, a legitimate cyber hero.
I think I'm one of the most outspoken of what we're calling the, quote, cyberpunk, unquote, genre. One of the things that I always consider very important when I'm talking politically is, in terms of an interview, is I won't pull any punches. A lot of people are going to go there and they're going to try not to incriminate themselves. They're going to try and be, sly about stuff. I've never done that. Every time someone wants to know something, I'm just very free about it. I'm the first person who was starting to talk very honestly about, viruses and terrorist acts and what this really means in terms of, the big picture, which isn't very popular with, I guess, sort of the mainstream population. But the underground set see me as a hero for that because I'm being honest. And that's the one thing that they really want to see. So I guess my fame then is coming from the fact that I have certain opinions and certain technical skills, and I'm perfectly willing to share them with whoever wants to know. I have what I call my 3D policy. If I show up dead, I disappear, or if I'm disabled, meaning someone messes up an attempt on me, I'm in a coma or something like that, there's a trigger which has to be reset on a weekly basis. If I'm not paying attention to that and I don't attend to that, then things get a little uncomfortable for everybody else. There are some safety provisions in there where if it seems natural, someone else can stop it. I'm not about to say how, and I'm not about to say who and what the mechanism is, because that puts me at greater risk. But one of the things that I feel perfectly comfortable is if they stick me in a cell, things are going to start to happen very, very slowly, and it's going to build up like an avalanche. And when that happens, I don't think I'll be in prison very much longer after that. Many, many years ago, we didn't have computers, and computers have been slowly phasing in as they've been going by. Certain individuals, because of computers, are becoming very heavily empowered. This is all about personal empowerment. Right now, because of the way computers are networked, I'm as powerful as a government agency. I'd say I've got about as much power as, say, a group in the Department of Defense here. Maybe not the gross national product or per capita as they do, but just as powerful. Soon, in a couple of years, I'm going to be much more powerful than they are because they're still stuck in local mode. Okay, things about computer viruses, I can go beyond boundaries. Things about networks, I can go beyond. One of the things I learned a long time ago is the old rule of thumb. Distance means nothing to a computer hacker, phone freak, whatever. Anyone using a computer, the phone line, the computer, fax, who knows? Distance doesn't mean anything anymore. I can be anywhere I want. And one of the other things I found out about computer viruses, it's a beautiful lever. Give me a lever and I shall move the earth. Okay? For me, a computer virus is a way of building a little AI of me, an artificial intelligence that can go out and copy itself millions of times and do whatever it has to. One of the things I was asked recently is, sure, you can sit down and write a virus which would take down the banking system, but would you really? And I've told people before, and I'll tell people again. And if I think it's necessary, I will. One of the reasons I said that was someone asked me about what happens if we get a fascist government here in the States. Would you be willing to take it down? And the more they get computerized, the more powerful I get, the more willing I will be to do that.
One of the fascinating things about this new cybernetic or electronic universe that we are creating is that many of the ethical rules and the moral postures and even the legal limitations of the material world don't work anymore.
You ever heard the expression, information wants to be free? That's the slogan of the computer underground.